I'm Rachel Miles. I'm a lecturer in aerosol science at the University of Bristol, and I'm also the course manager for the aerosol science CDT. So I'm standing in today for our CDT director, Jonathan Reed, who unfortunately can't be here. And I'm going to outline a little bit about how our CDT works, how we've delivered our RRI training this year, and what changes we're going to make for next year based on our experiences. So for a little bit of background, the Aerosol Science CDT is a 7-institution CDT that is led by Bristol. So our partners are Bristol, Bath, University of Cambridge, the University of Hertfordshire, Manchester, Imperial College London and Leeds. So our students undertake a 4-year training and research PhD, and they can do their projects in any one of our partner institutions, but they spend their first 7 months of training with us in Bristol at the CDT Hub. And while they're here, they do a variety of courses in core aerosol science, but also in kind of softer, more transferable skills. So they do a research methods unit where our responsible innovation training sits, and they also do professionalism and translation. As part of the CDT, we'll be training 80 PhD students over the lifetime. We had a cohort of 14 last year, and we have 20 students starting this year. And we have around 50 industrial partners, and we run a tier model for our industrial partners. So our first tier partners will host student placements. The next tier, for a nominal fee of £5,000 a year, they can access all of the training materials that we have for any of their employees. And the final tier is that they can part fund a studentship. So that's a bit of background on the CDT. Before I start talking about our responsible innovation training, I also want to emphasize that we're a very multidisciplinary CDT. So when a lot of people think of aerosols, they think of spray cans, but actually an aerosol is solid and liquid particles dispersed in a gas phase. So we look at any process which involves aerosol. So our academics, and we have around 50 academics associated with the CDT, they're based in very diverse departments. So we have engineers, chemists, physicists, earth scientists, biological scientists and pharmacists. So our students undertake projects in atmospheric science, looking at cloud formation. We also have students working in industrial processes. So for example, this year we have a student working on the manufacture of carbon nanotubes through aerosol synthesis. And we also have students looking at health effects and disease transmission and the use of aerosols to deliver drugs to the lungs. So because it's such a broad-ranging CDT, there are obviously lots of different issues involving responsible innovation that depend on exactly the project that a student is investigating. So the training that we delivered for our first cohort, the training itself was delivered by the University of Bristol Responsible Innovation team. They deliver RI training to the 9 EPSRC CDTs that Bristol have. And so I want to acknowledge Vivian Koo and Richard Owen, who are the one that kind of develop and deliver the training for us. So we start in the first week that our students were here. They took part in an Introduction to Responsible Innovation workshop. And this was a cross CDT workshop. So it was not just our students, but students from other CDTs. And here the team used games and case studies to explore concepts and frameworks that shape responsible innovation practices in engineering sciences. And this used the EPSRC area framework as a jumping off point and looked at the key competencies that are needed to undertake responsible innovation, ways in which research can become entangled ethically, politically, socially, or environmentally, and how regulatory frameworks respond to innovation. So that was kind of the kickoff that our students had. This was followed up later in the first term, just before Christmas, by a public engagement and responsible innovation workshop, which was run in collaboration with the public engagement team at Bristol. So here the students were introduced to public engagement theory and how this could relate to or enable responsible innovation practice. And as part of this workshop, students were provided with the opportunity to discuss their research with non-experts. So the team brought in a range of artists and creatives who came and talked to our students. The students got practice at explaining their research in non-expert terms, and also had, what you could assume the general public ask them questions about what their research might mean. These were the two training sessions our students had, and we followed this up in the CDT. Our students have to produce a PhD project proposal during their time with us, and this is assessed for their research methods unit. And we asked the students to include a section in this project proposal specifically looking at responsible innovation in relation to their project. We gave them a set of questions to consider, and these sections that the students wrote were reviewed by the responsible innovation team. Each student was provided with some personalised feedback and was invited to request one-to-one help and guidance at any stage throughout their PhD. So obviously some of our students will remain in Bristol, but others will go to our partner institutions, but they can still access help from the responsible innovation team at any time. Training for cohort 2019 still to come. We weren't able to deliver it this year due to timetabling over the summer with moving to remote learning, but they will take part in a responsible innovation and anticipation workshop at the end of this year, which will use games and collaborative activities to deliver a grounding in anticipation and foresight. And their students are going to participate in some experiential futures activities and then use these to reflect on their own research. So this is trying to build on the skills that they're developing as they're moving into their actual PhD projects. Now they're starting their second year. In terms of kind of within the CDT, we're also going to follow up responsible innovation in cooperative learning groups. So we've arranged our students into groups of 3 or 4, and they will be meeting regularly once a month throughout the rest of their PhD. And we will give them topics to discuss in this meeting, or they can come up with their own. It's a way of keeping the cohort going and keeping their development going. And our students will also take part in summer schools each year, and we're going to revisit responsible innovation during those summer schools. And we're also investigating the possibility of asking the students to produce some form of chapter or short part of their thesis looking at responsible innovation. Because we're a 7-centre CDT, this obviously depends quite a lot on what each institution is allowed to do, but this is something that we're going to try and move forwards to do. Feedback from our cohort this year was uniformly positive. They really enjoyed the sessions. I think a lot of them had no idea what it was going to be going into them. But comments I had was that it really made them think in a new way, and they found that really stimulating and really engaging. And so I think it was a very positive experience for all of them. Something that we did notice this year was that there was kind of a range of how well the students were able to deal with responsible innovation in their project proposal. There seemed to be a range of different levels of input that they'd received from their supervisor in helping writing that. So a change that we've made for this year to try and kind of level that playing field is that now all of our supervisors are invited to take part with their students in the first workshop. So we'll be running that twice this year to enable all the supervisors to attend as well. So hopefully this is helping the students when it comes to developing their skills, but it's also spreading responsible innovation further within the kind of CDT family. We're also introducing 2 new workshops this year. One looking at ethical and social issues in aerosol science. And this is going to be case study based. So there's quite a good case study in terms of geoengineering with the SPICE project that was actually involved someone at Bristol who's now in the CDT. So that's going to be a case study we're going to look at. And we can also look at things like dual use concerns because it's aerosol science, we quite often develop instrumentation to produce aerosols. We want to use those aerosols for research, but you could imagine that there could be other nefarious purposes that people might want to use that technology for. So when we're looking at designing equipment and materials and dissemination of that knowledge, we have to consider dual use. So we're going to provide some training in that kind of sphere. And we're also going to do a course on research ethics. Some of the students, because if they're working in a medical background, maybe doing research with patients, and so this will be helpful to them. But also actually with the advent of COVID, a lot of the people working in aerosol science at Bristol, who are chemists and physicists by trade, have actually been working on COVID related projects, and so have had to start doing work with people. And I think that's been quite a steep learning curve for a lot of them. And so we would like our students to have those skills and to be aware of what they need to know if they were ever need to do that right from the start. So moving beyond the student cohort, obviously I've talked about that this year we're going to extend the training to include academic supervisors. And we're also investigating whether we can provide some of our training resources to our industrial and public sector partners, because we've had quite a lot of interest from them in a lot of different aspects of our training. And we have had some requests that can we do something for responsible innovation with them. So that's something that we're looking at for moving forwards. That's all I have to say for now, so I'll stop share and I'm happy to take any questions.